again, my crafty friends. So we're back today to put together our napkin fold card. As you can see, I have brought out the card pieces for the belly band and the sentiment strip and that mat. In addition, I have brought out all the little small triangles that we cut out from those squares that we created in Design Space, and the 4 larger triangles that we cut out from the other square. Now we also have those 2 5 3/4 inch, that 1 5 1/4, and 1 5-inch piece, and then our card base. So the first thing that we're going to do is I'm going to show you guys some of the elements that I have colored up off screen to create this card. Now, I didn't leave any other coloring in, but I used this honeybee stamp card and the Fluttering By to say sentiment. This is called Fluttering By, and I love this stamp set. I absolutely love butterflies, so I chose to use some of these elements, and here are some of the butterflies that I colored up from this set to use on the card. So I knew that with my card, a lot of it was going to be yellows and greens, so I decided to bring the pops of color in with the butterflies that we're using today. So next up, I used the Daisy Bouquet stamp set from Simon Says Stamp, and I actually had not used this set yet, but I fell in love with it when I saw it. So I decided to use some of the elements from this set, and here are the ones that I have colored up off camera using some of my Copics and my Jelly Roll pen. I also use a lot of sentiments from the stamp set with this one. And last but not least is my Be Happy set. Now, I love this set. And I just thought these 3 sets could be used together to create something wonderful. So these are the elements from that set that I have decided to use in the card. So here we go. First thing we're going to do is go in and we are going to start folding all of these score lines. This is the 3 and the 9-inch score lines that we created on both sides, and I'm just going to bring in my Cricut tool and I'm going to crease these score lines. We're going to want to fold these and score them really good because we want this paper to be really flexible. Now this paper is about an 80-pound weight cardstock because I needed to make sure that I could use a cardstock that could be bent and creased without any breaking. I did not want my cardstock to break, and I knew that this had a lot of folds in it. So here you can see I'm just taking all of those score lines and flexing them back and forth so that we can get all of the elements for this card base moving in the direction that we're wanting it to go. Now, as you can see, I'm going in and I am doing these going one way, and then I'm going to flip my cardstock over and I am going to actually start folding them the other way. Because of this being a fun fold type of card, we need to ensure that the creases and the score lines of the card are all able to fold and bend with ease. So you'll see several times during this video that I'm just kind of flexing the paper to ensure that it is ready to move easily into the position that the card is supposed to go. So now that I have folded all of the score lines, now I'm starting to move that card into position so that you can kind of see how the card base will actually go together. So this is kind of what your card should look like once you're done. This is the napkin fold, and it ends up being very easy. So now that we have that kind of flexing, I am going to take that 5 3/4 piece of paper and I'm going to layer it with the 5 1/4 and the 5-inch piece. Now, one thing that I will tell you that I did not do, but I would give you this word of caution: do as I say and not as I do. Once you glue these 3 pieces of paper together, go ahead and create your scene. I placed it inside the card base and then created my scene, which did not allow me the opportunity to trim off any edges that I wanted to trim off with the scene that I built on the inside. It still came out looking fine, but I just feel like it would have given me a lot more room and creativity creative license, I guess is what you would say. If I had created it prior to actually gluing it down to the inside of the card base. So at any rate, now I've got all those put in, and as you can see, I am gluing it down into the center of the napkin fold card. Now, I chose to do a card like this for this particular format because it gives me a lot of real estate. I have a lot of space to work in, so I can create a nice scene with this. So as you can see, I'm starting to bring in some of my elements, and I'm just going to kind of fiddle with it to see where I want all the pieces to lay. And then once I get everything looking kind of the way that I want it to look, I will start gluing it down. So you can see here, this is what I was talking about. The majority of this is yellows and greens. So I wanted some pops of color to come in, and that's why I chose the color combination that I chose for the butterflies. And I knew that using the purples and the blues, that would be very complementary to that kind of yellow orangey color palette that we have with the bees and the sunflowers. So as you can see, this is what the layout for my scene is going to look like. So now that I have that all laid out kind of the way that I want it to be, I am going to glue everything down. Again, we're kind of flexing that card back together just to make sure that everything is starting to lay down the way that we want it to be. Now, the next thing that I'm going to do is I'm going to take those large triangles, and the way that you're going to do this is the larger triangles are going to be closer to the inside of the card. After we get these 4 triangles down, the next set of triangles all are the same size, and it's just about alternating them to get a nice pattern around the entirety of your card. So after I've glued down this last piece, I am going to dry fit all of my smaller triangles around the rest of the card to kind of get them in the pattern that I want them to be in before I glue them down. So that is another tip that I will give you. Please make sure, like as you can see, I'm going in and I'm alternating. I'm doing the 4 corners on the inside, alternating the pattern. Then I'm going to go and do the 4 corners on the outside, alternating the patterns. And then lastly, I'm going to come in beside those larger triangles and I'm going to alternate the pattern. And I feel like that gives a nice balance to the card with the 2 different styles of cardstock that I have chosen to use here. And actually this is the same pattern paper. I just used the front and the back of the pattern paper. So now that we have those kind of dry fitted where I want them to be, I'm going to start gluing them down, and all of these have enough space for there to be a nice border for you to see the purple card base around each of the triangles. So I really enjoyed that too. So now that we have all of these pieces glued down, we are going to next go into working on the belly band part of the card. So once we do this, we're going to then bring out these 2 squares. These were the 4 by 2 inch squares or rectangles that I decided to use in order to create the sentiment. So again, I'm going to bring out that Fluttering By stamp set, and I'm going to use the Fluttering By to say hi sentiment, and that to say is kind of scripty, and then the rest of it is just basic lettering, and I really like that. I'm going to use some of my VersaFine Onyx Black ink to stamp that out. Once I get that stamped out, then I can layer that on to its mat and get that glued down. Then I can start thinking about what I want to go around it. So since I had so many elements for this set that I had colored up, I decided that I could put a bee and a flower and a butterfly on the outside as well to kind of frame the sentiment. So as you can see, I'm just here kind of figuring out where I want all the elements to lay because I don't want my butterfly to cover any of the sentiment. So now I'm going to start working on how I want my belly band to go on to the card. And I'm looking to see if there are any sentiments that I can place on the inside of this card. And so I decided to take a lot of those smaller stamped images and place them all over the inside of the card and let that be the sentiment for the inside of the card. So I went off screen and I stamped all of those with a stamping block, and I was fairly surprised that I was able to get them all stamped out without any mistakes. I don't know that I recommend doing that either. I probably would have stamped these before I glued them down if that had not been an afterthought, so I could have used a MISTI. But since I thought about doing that after, I ended up using a stamp block, and I just had to be very careful. So now we're bringing back in that belly band. I'm going to fold down the card just to kind of get an idea of where I want the belly band to sit and where I want to place the score lines, where I want to crease it. Now, when you're doing your belly band, you want to make sure that it's not too tight, but you don't want it so loose that it is falling off the card as well. Remember, this is the part that is going to hold your card closed. So I'm taking my time and I'm using my grid mat on my my media mat to help me decide where I want to have that lined up. So I'm going to give that a good finger crease, and then I'm going to bring in my Cricut tool and I'm going to actually crease that down really well once I see where I want this to end up. Now don't worry about that gap that's right there, because this panel will go right over it, so no one will ever know that that is actually not a full piece of vellum that is going around the back of there. So once again, I'm kind of dry fitting to figure out where I want my elements to be. And then I'm going to go ahead and get ready to glue all of those pieces down. But before I glue that down, the first thing that I'm going to do is I'm going to glue down one piece of my sentiment to the actual belly band. Now, I'm not going to glue down both sides right now, just because I like to double and triple check to ensure that I have this all placed where I want it to be. So the first thing that I will do is I'm going to glue down the right side, and then I will go and I will fit it again onto my card to make sure that I'm still giving myself enough space, and then I will go and glue down the left side. So here we are adding in the butterfly kind of where I want that to be. And I've also glued down the honeybee on the left side. Now I'm going to take that glue and I'm going to run it across just one section of the belly band, and I'm going to use my grid mat again to help line up where I want that sentiment plate to land. Now, once I have that done, here you can see that I'm bringing this in again. I'm flexing my card again, and I would recommend probably putting this underneath something heavy once you're done. It will help all of the pieces to lay down really well, and the more that you have it sitting in a closed position, the better it will lay. When you're first doing it, you're having to train your cardstock to do what it is that you're wanting it to do. So now that I've fitted that for another time, just to make sure everything's where I want it to be, I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to close up my belly band, and then I'm going to add that last flower. Once all of that is dry, then I'm going to start working it on and off of the card base so that it is able to move freely and to ensure that I have everything just how I want it. So again, we're flexing the card, kind of getting it to close down the way that we want it to, and then I'm going to fit that belly band over just to make sure that it is going on nice and easy. And like I said, this is the reason why you want to make sure you have a little bit of space, but you don't want to have too much space, because this is what's going to hold your card in place. And this is kind of what the card is going to look like when we're done. Now, I also cut out another 5 3/4 piece square that's going to go on the back. For me, that just finishes off my card. You could add another white piece back here and do a handwritten sentiment. I just wanted something that kind of made the card look finished, so that's why I added that piece to the back. Completely optional. You don't have to. You can choose to add, subtract, multiply, do whatever you want to do to make this card your own. So again, I'm just fitting the belly band onto the card again to make sure that it's going on and off with ease. So this is pretty much the card that we created on yesterday in Design Space, and I had a lot of extra elements left when I did this card, so I decided to create a couple additional cards for you guys. So I just wanted to give you guys another look at this card. I've added some Spectrum Noir glitter pen to this, so I'm just kind of trying to get it in the light so that you guys can see the sparkle. You know, I love the sparkle. And this is how it feels when you take the belly band off, and this is your scene and all of your sentiments that are inside. You know, they say things like I miss you, hello, just because, just a note, things like that. Just a nice little thinking of you card was what I was going for here. So now we'll put that back on, and I will show you guys the other two cards that I made with the other elements that I had colored up. So this one is another card. I used an alcohol ink background and some of those other pieces, and I just put another sentiment from that Fluttering By set in this card. So then the third card, I did a little shaker card. I used Cricut Design Space to cut out the hearts and all of the pieces as well as the flourishes that are in there. And then I heat embossed another butterfly on the inside. So that's my cards for today, guys. Bye bye, and I will see you guys in the next video.